Hello, and welcome to another What's Gone Wrong. We've looked at San Jose Sharks, we've looked at the Winnipeg Jets, and in our latest series of a team that did make the playoffs last year but is struggling to do it this time, it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now they are the only team, and this is the weird thing I think in my book, the only team in the Eastern Conference that made the playoffs last year, but as it stands, are not going to make it this year. All the other 7 are absolutely fine. For now. Toronto aren't. And Toronto are also one of those only teams that's decided that Mike Babcock, the coach, needs to go out and they need to get a new coach in or it's not going to work. Everyone else in the Eastern Conference has stayed with the manager they've got, or they brought in a manager before the season started. So, what is it about Toronto? Why did Babcock go? I think that's one of the first things that's wrong with Toronto, their overall mentality. I don't think it helps that you have a team that is good, that has potential, that hasn't won a Stanley Cup in ages, like well before most teams in the league were founded. The last time the Maple Leafs, was it black and white? It's been a while. So that doesn't help. There's expectation, They need to win a Stanley Cup at some point. Please, because there's a big fan base in Toronto. And so it doesn't help even when you do make the playoffs, you don't really succeed. Last 3 years, first round, out to the Washington Capitals. 2018, out to Boston. 2019, out to Boston in Game 7. And that doesn't help because you kind of think, well, what's the point? What's the point of making the playoffs? We're only going to... It almost feels at the moment that in a weird way, Toronto's season, if they don't make the playoffs, that would actually be better for them because then they can look and be like, right, well, we appear to be going backwards, we need to fix this, maybe we just need to strip things down, is a rebuild needed, yada yada. So there's that. I think if Toronto did actually have a season where either they face someone other than Boston, which might help, a slightly different opponent, and they don't have to worry about the sort of whole losing in Game 7 thing, or they do face Boston again, and they win, and then that clears up a whole load of mental anxiety and sort of fatigue that's sort of been building up the last couple of seasons, and then overall for the franchise that might be better. 2, and I feel like this is a common theme with a lot of teams that it's kind of gone wrong for, defense. But also, particularly for Toronto, just the goalie situation. Freddy Anderson is not having a great time of it, but there isn't really an option to sort of rest him because Hutchinson, the backup goalie, isn't doing much better. I think he got a shutout recently, but I feel like the Leafs haven't had a good backup goalie in a while. And at least, for other teams, like you look at Boston, for example, Tuukka Rask has been out for a bit with a head injury, but that's fine because they've got Halak. Halak can come in and do a perfectly fine job, and you know that there's a defense in front who will, to a certain extent, take no prisoners. Toronto don't have that. 3, for the moment, I would say effort. I would say the general effort. When you look at the Winnipeg Jets, I wouldn't say that the effort isn't there, it's just the defense has issues. If you look at the San Jose Sharks, I feel like the effort is improving. Toronto, I feel like the effort is getting worse. And quite surprisingly so. You would think if they were sort of losing their grip on third spot in the Atlantic, which they were, they would try harder. In fact, it felt like in the games against Florida in particular, where they lost 8-4, and they were down 7-1 at one point, and the last game against Chicago, where they lost 6-2, just didn't turn up, didn't get going. It didn't seem to almost want to get going, which is troubling. Because maybe, a year or so ago, when it kind of was just the Atlantic hierarchy, Boston are going to make it, Tampa are going to make it, Toronto are going to make it, that's how it is, all the other teams are lacking. You don't have that anymore. Florida are much, much better. And Florida can go toe-to-toe with Toronto offensively, which is Toronto's strength, and win. So that's a big problem for Toronto to sort. They need to be putting in the effort. They can't just assume that Austin Matthews or John Tavares is going to sort everything, or that Freddy's going to get back to his best. They need to be putting in the effort across the board. Otherwise, Toronto, Florida are going to get further away. Tampa and Boston, don't even think about it. And I guess in terms of, are there any other issues? I think it might just be stop over-relying. It kind of feeds into what I was saying before. Stop over-relying on the offense and maybe go out there and get a good defender who's going to take no prisoners, who's going to sort of fight and snarl and get you through games. Because the Leafs can probably afford to lose a forward. They've got depth there. That is not the issue. But they do need to bring someone in, because that's not, 2 big games and you've let in 14 goals. That's bad. And even in games where you're doing slightly better, like against Winnipeg, you're still sort of struggling to sort of keep the opposition out. Even against the New Jersey Devils recently, which the Toronto Maple Leafs managed to win both their games against the New Jersey Devils. They let in 4 goals on the away game, and they let in 4 goals in the home game. And that was a home game they should have won much more easily than just 7-4. So I think there's just, the whole sum of it just seems to me that the Leafs could get themselves, back into a playoff spot. The wildcard spots are very much there. They're only a point or so out of the wildcard spots. But there needs to be more effort, more determination. Don't just assume that your classy forwards are going to get you out of this hole. It's not enough to assume that. You might need to make a few trades. You need to knuckle down, and you need to just fight your way through. Because the Leafs have shown in periods during the season that they can be very good. They can go on a nice hot streak. But at the moment, recent results are worrying. And I think if the Leafs continue to just sort of almost nonchalantly make nonchalant starts to games and not really put the effort in, then they won't make the 3rd spot. They probably won't make the wildcard spot. And there will be an awful lot of soul-searching over the summer. And I guess we'll see if there's any more soul-searching to be done after tonight, because in the next episode of What's Gone Wrong, we'll be looking at the last team from last year that made the playoffs but won't be making it at the moment, is the Nashville Predators. Toronto at Nashville tonight. We'll have a look at how the Nashville Predators, are they doing any better than the other 3 teams? And what's gone wrong there, why are things not quite right in Smashville. This has been another episode. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.